So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Um, as you are aware, we have announced this session and we're doing this collaboratively with Empower Mind Matters. Um, the pandemic is affecting a lot of us emotionally, and we have addressed this in a four-part series last month as well. Uh, but what we did not talk about was how it's affecting children and how we can help children deal with the pandemic stress and the anxiety, and especially the reduced peer interaction that they are currently facing. Um, they really, as most of us know, they've hardly played or interacted with their friends. They've spent months looking at screens for long periods of time, and it's affecting their health in many ways. It's also creating, there are some news items which are talking of developmental delays and challenges as well for younger kids. So we have with us today Dr. Sapna Bangar, who's a specialist child and adolescent psychiatrist, and we'll be talking to her today. Dr. Sapna is the head of Empower, the center in Mumbai, and she has over 15 years of experience working as a psychiatrist with children and young people, and a special interest in neurodevelopmental disorders such as ADHD and autism, eating disorders, and emotional problems, including self harm and suicide. And she believes that every client is unique and should be treated as such. Quick reminder for people, if you have missed our previous episodes that we've done on mental health during the pandemic, you can find the recordings on our YouTube channel. We did a four-part series, as I said, with Havovi Bhagwagar, clinical psychologist in English. And we did the same in Hindi with the psychologist Snigdha Mishra. Um, and tomorrow, at the same time, 4 p.m., we will talk to Debanani Bhattacharya, also from Empower, clinical psychologist, on the same topic about children's mental health, but in Hindi. So if you would like to forward this information to anybody else that you think would find it useful, please do share. Um, as always, the information here does not replace a personal consultation. For those of you who are on Zoom, if at all, this session is being recorded. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can post your questions on the live feed. And you can always write to us at editor@patientsengage.com. So let's get started because I think we have a fair amount of ground to cover. Welcome, Dr. Sapna.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for
Thank you
joining.
so much for having me. And it's a pleasure and looking forward to this.
Thank you. Dr. Sapna, what are the factors that influence a child's emotional well-being? And, are there differences across the various age groups as we look at the range from 0 to 18?
So I think there are multiple factors. The factors remain the same, but the importance changes according to age. So, for example, a really young child, for them, the parents are the most important. So the parenting bit is of utmost importance. Whereas
Mm,
as they grow older, the environmental factors become more important in terms of peers.
right.
So, just to categorize, there are mainly, three factors. One is their own factors. So, all children are born with, their own temperament. There are
Mm,
genetic factors. So, things run in families about how you react to things. So, those are more or less, what we call fixed factors, which are very difficult to change. But following that, there is the parental factors about, how children learn from their parents by observing them, modeling behavior,
mm,
learning from them, because whatever is right or wrong for them on how we react emotionally. So if there is a lot of research to say, children from violent families tend to become violent themselves. And that is how it is. And the younger the age group, the more the importance of parents and their own mental health and how they react. And after that comes the environmental factors such as schools, and peers. And as we all know, once they go into the teenage years, that those become more important, because parents almost they're important, but they take a back seat, and peer influence starts becoming more and more. So what their teachers say, maybe, or whatever their professors say, what their peers do, what their friends say, become more important. So these are more or less, the factors that influence the social and emotional well-being of a child.
Right, right. And we've now had 15 months of the pandemic, and schools have been closed in the sense that people are not going physically to schools, and they're studying from home. Um, and there are other aspects of the pandemic which are stressful as well at various points. How has this affected children, and has it affected the different groups differently?
Um, so I think we are seeing, at least in clinical practice, we are seeing a lot of anxiety, fear, stress, and lack of motivation and hopelessness
Hmm.
in children coming across. The way they react or the way they express these emotions are different in different age groups. So, for example, younger children will react if they are stressed or they're feeling anxious about something, the way they will react, because they don't have the vocabulary to say
Right,
that I am anxious, or they might not be able to understand themselves that this is what I am feeling. So the way
right.
it comes across is behavior.
Hmm.
So, they start behaving, they start having temper tantrums, they start behaving in a way, that is, we call, that the naughtiness has increased, for example, clinging behavior has increased with the
Hmm.
parents. There is a lot of crying and irritability in the child, which, younger children. And as they grow older, I think, it's becoming more and more about very uncertain about what this is going to hold. I think we were observing initially there was a lot of anxiety and fear, especially after the first wave. But with the second wave and now talks of third wave, there is
Hmm.
a lot of hopelessness and uncertainty. And especially, I think the teenagers, the children who are planning to go to university, for example, all of them have their plans stalled at the moment, which is causing a lot of angst and disruption to their plans,
Right,
um, causing, as I said, in some cases, depression and anxiety. But it is mainly, I think, stress all across. It's all not doom and gloom, though. I think there are some children that we are observing who are doing well, and those are the ones that were already pre-pandemic struggling with, say, social anxiety. For them, actually, this has been, they are quite enjoying staying at home, and the online schooling. Or there were children who were being bullied in school, and they
right.
have found a safe haven at home. But at some point, the fact remains that they will have to go back, and probably that readjustment is going to be that much more difficult for them.
Right, right. And in terms of the fact that they've not had social interaction with each other, how does that kind of impact them? One is, of course, the whole pandemic. There has been so much, the lockdown, and especially wave two was quite tough for everybody, right? So, but how's the fact that they don't have people to interact with physically or play with, etc.? How is that kind of affecting them?
I think it is huge. That impact, I think, we are still to see that impact because we are still in that bubble. But children have not been to school, have not interacted face to face, as you're saying, with other people, is because the normal development has almost been stalled for 2 years. It
Right,
is because there is so much of learning that when they go to school happens not only in the school, but maybe outside the adult supervision. So when they
Correct.
learn to maneuver things, negotiate with each other, play with each other. So the play also, initially is parallel play and then interactive play. And it's almost like they have missed those periods of development, which is huge for
Correct.
so people, children especially have forgotten what it takes to be interacting with peers, which is very important for especially the younger age group,
Mm,
the preschoolers and the primary schoolers. It is very, very important to learn those skills, because otherwise we are going to have a generation of children who, are completely lacking in social skills.
right. Right. And at the moment, what are the typical signs that, that one observes if a child is not doing well or is struggling emotionally? And again, does it vary by age group?
So in younger children, as I was mentioning, it is mainly behavior. So we are coming with lot of, this was a well-adjusted child before, was calm before, now is having temper tantrums, difficult to manage, is disturbing parents in meetings, is not allowing parents to, carry on with their work, excessive clinginess to parents, crying, excessive crying and difficult to soothe down, sleep problems, nightmares. I recently had a child who started bedwetting, after he's 9 and he started bedwetting after in the pandemic. So things like that are happening with the younger child, younger age group, where, as I said, sometimes they find difficult to express that this is anxiety, but the way it is coming across, we all like, we know that it is anxiety and fear and stress, but that is the manifestation as we see in younger children. In older age group, I think it comes across, especially the teenagers, the exacerbation of the irritability. So it
Mm,
is isolation, shutting themselves in a room, not interacting at all with parents, being very, very curt with parents, not expressing themselves. And some cases expressing, these kinds of hopelessness and nothing's going to change, and my life is ruined and my life is going to remain, as is, and this is the end. That kind of scenario is coming across in older children.
right. Right. Um, and so therefore, what steps should, and the moment, unfortunately, it's only parents that we, have to kind of again bear the brunt of figuring out solutions. So what steps should parents take to ease the situation? And, what are the baby steps that they can take to help the children struggling with all of this?
Um, so mainly it is, as parents, I think our first instinct is trying to protect our children, but I think communication is key to, talk to children about what is happening, because what I am observing in my practice is, either parents feel the children are too young to understand what is happening, so they want to, almost protect them from any bad news, almost
Hmm.
shield them from anything that is happening. So, for example, if there is a family I'm seeing who are going through some financial losses, and
Right.
that is huge, but they, obviously they don't want their children to know about it.
Hmm.
But for me, communication is very important. Even if we don't give the nitty gritty of it, letting the children know that something is, not quite right,
Right.
because children are very intuitive. They
Correct.
they
Correct.
they might not know what is happening, but they will pick up the fact that their parents are stressed about something, or parents, and then they, if you don't tell them 2 plus 2 is 4, they're going to make 2 plus 2 is, 200, because they are
Right.
then going to imagine uh, what might be wrong, because they know something is wrong. So I always encourage my parents to, have communication, not let that, have open conversations with them, talk to
Right.
them about, for example, what is happening in the world. May,
Hmm.
as I said, you don't need to give them the number of deaths that have happened, but at least let them know that, something is not quite right.
Right.
And reassure them that whatever happens, because this world has turned topsy-turvy for them. It is
Correct.
all over the place. Whatever they knew for now, for confirm, like, their schools are not going, it's virtual schooling, parents are working from home, maybe the house help is not available, or whatever was available has changed, so that their life has undergone a lot of change. But there are certain things that will always remain the same. So, for parents to tell them every once in a while that, we are always going to love you, is going to be
Right.
important in that.
Right.
And don't give false assurances. I say, don't tell them I will always, like, nothing's going to go wrong with mom, like I'm not going to get COVID ever. No,
Mm.
be honest in your reassurances, but reassurances are important. I think schedule is very important. Routines and schedules, and having, letting your child know tomorrow the day that it's going to look, you know, even if it is small schedules, you don't have to make an hour by hour schedule, but we are going to wake up at this time. Mom and dad, or like mom has a meeting. I have a whiteboard at home at the moment. Let's
Mm.
short, small whiteboard in which I write, the important, from 2 to 3, I have a session, so I'm not going to be available. And
Right.
it's quite easy because my children just come and then they look and they say, okay, we can't
Mm.
disturb her at this time. So, letting them know what is happening in the day, planning your day, maybe a night in advance, and letting them know that is what is happening, is useful, because giving them some kind of, okay, you have some free time now, after that what are we going to do, will keep them occupied, because otherwise they won't know what is happening in the day and it's all chaos.
Right.
uh, and giving them some kind of, this is I say that flexibility is the key now. We cannot follow the rules that we were following pre-pandemic. So it
Mm.
is okay to, relax the rules a little bit, in terms of, I have a lot of parents asking me, screen time has increased exponentially. And I'm like, you don't have to stick to the 1 hour from 12 to 1. If you have a meeting at 11 o'clock, let that screen time be, 11 to 12.
Right.
In
Right.
So being fluid with working from home, parents especially, because you are balancing both, as well as looking after yourself. I think very, very important to look after yourself,
Mm.
and helping children let go of their energy. So simple things, you don't, like, we all know that at the moment we have children who have a lot of excess energy and they can't actually go down, or let go of that energy. I advise, younger kids, for example, just put on the music in the evening
Mm.
and dance, like,
Mm.
simple activities like this which you can do at home. But it's very important of letting go of that energy, for the kids. So,
Right.
whatever you can do at home, make sure that it is done, because most of the behavior is because of boredom, because they don't know what they're doing,
Mm.
and they also don't know what the future is holding. So in whatever little way we can plan our day, let go of their energy in some way, and letting them, have some time with parents, which is uninterrupted. A lot
Right.
of my parents, for example, say, where is the time,
Mm.
where do we find the time? And I'm like, 15 minutes in a day with, with your child, especially if they're young, is absolutely non-negotiable. We can find 15 minutes of just sitting with them and giving them our undivided attention, and that will work wonders.
Mm. Okay. Um, the other thing that is happening is a lot of parents are concerned, especially with older children, right? That they are often stuck in one room, and keeping the channels of communication open kind of seems to be very difficult. They don't step out of the room, or they'll step out just to come out and have a meal, and then they'll rush back. So I think some parents are really struggling with that as well. What's your inputs to them?
uh, Yeah, it is about, I have a lot of parents who are struggling with how much privacy do we give them versus how much do we interrupt them. Do we, like, especially, teenagers, do we go constantly in their room and ask them what to do? Do we knock
Mm.
on the door? Because most of the children, like, quite a few are locking the doors as well.
Right.
So it is a big just yesterday I saw, a family where they said that before the lockdown, we were both working, like as parents, and we used to come home only by 7, 8. So the child had the whole house to
Correct.
themselves. And
Correct.
now we are at home all the time. So we are constantly interrupting him, or at least somebody going in his room all the time. And he's not reacting very well to that.
Mm,
Uh, so those are very common kind of scenarios. What I say is there are it's very important to have at least some time with whatever age your child is, but to have some rules, like we are all having family meals together. I
mm,
think we have lost that culture of having family meals together, but the conversations that can happen and problems that can be solved just by sitting on the table and putting your phones away, even if it's one meal a day, but the
right.
whole family coming together, and that is non-negotiable. For example, it's like if parents say, okay, we are also not going to be doing any meetings and keeping the phones away, but this
Mm,
is our family time together. So that is like compulsory. The teenage, if we teenage child has to come out and sit, even if they're grunting and like not talking, at least they are
right.
part of the discussion that is happening around the table. At least they are aware about what is happening, and they might then slowly start communicating. Also, I advise my parents to, even if it's a shut door, and the letting the child know that they are available, because I think it comes as a surprise to many parents that teenagers want to be asked how they are. Teenagers still want to be, they might not accept it, but teenagers still want their parents, and parents are the safety net, to be
Mm,
honest.
correct.
So they will push boundaries to see how much they can push you. But at the end of the day, unconditionally, if you say, we are going to be here whenever you need to have a chat, if anything goes wrong in your life, if you are just, I've made coffee and come out, and like we can just have a chat whenever you feel like it. But every once in a while, remind your child that you are available to
Mm,
have conversations with them. And slowly, but surely, that gap of communication is going to reduce. But I always say that at least some time in a day, don't let that child keep themselves locked all day long. At least once in a while, like as I said, one meal, or
right.
a
Right.
coffee.
Right.
Make sure that that is still happening.
Mm. And um, okay. And if you have multiple children, right? So again, how do you balance the fact that there is, I mean, their needs are different, and that's the other thing which sometimes parents struggle with. If they have one in the small category who is needing all your attention, and one completely ignoring, your request for attention. But I mean, I think parents kind of struggle with balancing all this, especially if they also have to balance their hours with work, etc., right? So when do I push this, when do I stop this child, when do I let both go, and so on. Any kind of observations there or advice there?
uh, you can negotiate with the older child to spend some time with the younger child and give
Mm,
them some
incentive.
incentive, because they won't do it for free.
Right.
You just say that if you want A, B, and C, your duty is to spend at least, like playing with the younger child till till the parent gets free from work, and it
Right.
works. Especially, like if the incentive is good enough for the older child.
Mm,
But also the fact that spending separate time with both children. I know there is a lack of time, but even if it is 10-15 minutes, and having a balance about what the activities are going to be like,
mm,
because obviously the younger child is not going to be as impressed about spending, reading or sitting and doing something, whereas the older child will find it too childish to, run and play around. But there
right.
has to be balance, that today we are going to do this, tomorrow we'll do something else. And so that both children feel and be fair about it, and say, yesterday we did the running game, today we are going to be sitting and doing something else.
Mm,
uh, so that kind of balance between the activities between two children. And as I said, giving the responsibility and praise the older child to be taking responsibility of the younger child in some way, not like, giving the complete responsibility, but, at least 1 hour a day, you're supposed to be, playing with the younger child or reading to them, or like, doing something that is maybe something that is fun for both of them to do together.
Right, right. And just a reminder to those who just joined, we are talking to Dr. Sapna Bangar, who's a child and adolescent psychiatrist, on how the pandemic is affecting children's mental health. So if you have any questions, please do ask in the both YouTube and Facebook feeds. Um, so one of the things that I think we keep hearing about, and obviously we observe as well, is that uh, it's parents are also struggling with if they also have an older generation at home, that kind of adds a bit more complexity to it as well. So, it could be that there is lack of a support system as well, the domestic help, etc., is affected. But also the expectations of the grandparents vis-a-vis the behavior of the teenager um, causes kind of, the parents to feel very sandwiched between their how to balance the needs of
Both the
both
generations.
generations. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So any tips on how they can handle that uh, better?
So, you know, um, grandparents have certain expectations, and I think, the generation gap with each generation is very, very different. For example, obviously, grandparents, because of it's a double gap, they are
Correct.
going to find it extremely difficult to, connect with the younger generation. But it is about finding maybe somewhere a midpoint that all of the whole family enjoys doing something together. uh, it is also about managing expectations in terms of, setting the right expectations. Like I always tell my parents, do not feel guilty about saying no to
Hmm.
something.
Hmm.
You cannot please everyone. For example, I have parents who are extremely stressed because they're managing work from home, they're managing children and their virtual schooling, they're managing in-laws or parents who, they're concerned about the health concerns for them. And
Correct.
especially, like, if your domestic help has reduced in any way, it almost becomes an impossible situation.
Correct.
And do not try to balance everything together. you
Hmm.
know have an open conversation that I am really struggling with this. What help can you all give me? Because unless we openly accept that, this is not going to be possible for me, people will not realize.
Right.
So, you can actually use grandparents as an aid to be, helping out in childcare, for example, when you have that important meeting that you cannot miss.
Right.
So, using the strengths of the people around and collating all your strengths to be working together. And vis a vis, like, the teenagers can be, like, I've seen a lot of teenagers helping grandparents with technology, for example.
Correct. Absolutely.
So it is like teaching them how to use YouTube, because grandparents are struggling massively with and it gives them a sense of purpose as well. So if
Right.
you tell the teenager, hey, like, grandpa needs to download this banking app and learn how to, it's your duty to make them learn how to use this app. It
Hmm.
also gives the teenager a sense of purpose that, hey, I achieved something. I taught my grandparents something new.
Right.
So using, your resources in a way that they both feel empowered. Because, even if the grandparents, for example, a lot of complaints are that they are feeling very redundant at the moment. They have completely, this world is not something that, because the online world, for example, is not something that they are very comfortable with. So before it was different, they were independent, and a lot of independent grandparents, for example, are now struggling because, they can't get adjusted to the virtual
Correct.
world.
Correct.
So also making them feel useful, and giving both generations a kind of, sense of purpose.
Hmm. So it does require a bit more of creativity and thinking for the parents to figure these things out.
Yeah, thinking out of the box and being very open and honest about our own limitations. We
Hmm.
cannot be everywhere, and we are not superhumans even if we try to be. So accepting that I either it's your workplace, or you say, you take a backseat and say, I cannot meet this deadline because I have other responsibilities, or telling your children that I am really struggling, or telling your in-laws that I'm really struggling. But it's completely fine to say that I am struggling.
Hmm. Right, right. And um, one of the things that is, and you alluded to in the beginning as well, that uh, at the moment there is a lot of fear of the third wave affecting kids. But there's also this concern that as the lockdown, I mean, currently we're already seeing revenge travel happening. People are starting to go back to work. And then there's also the uncertainty of the future. How can families have better conversations around all of these topics? Because otherwise, if you don't talk about it, everybody just kind of imagines the worst, or fears the worst, and just does doom scrolling. And because the other thing is, I think in the past you could assume that your children were not kind of, you the avenues of information were controlled, right? But now they are online. And even if you are trying to limit it to only the time where they're doing homework or they're doing classwork, etc., but they still do have access to information, right? So how can you handle that conversation? How can families handle that conversation better?
Absolutely. I think, that's a great point, because we cannot hide information from children. And those days are no longer there where you're like, you're going to be doing as I say because I say so, because
Mm,
that doesn't work anymore. And there is that comparison, like, the expectations within the family might be very different. And that
mm,
is the other thing that we are observing. Maybe, one of the parents might be a little bit more, accepting about the fact that we have to go out at some point. The other parent might be very like, no, 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 we can't be going out. And how do you then negotiate with the child, because the children are already known to be causing that splitting behavior between parents. So they
right,
are going to, and as I'm saying, they have access to information. So somebody's friend has traveled somewhere, why can't we? That
right.
is the question. So those kind of things, I think, what is most important is for the parents to be on the same page first before they chat to the children. Because if the parents are going to say, one parent is going to say it's completely fine that you go for a sleepover, the second parent says no, absolutely not, that is going to confuse the child even more.
Mm,
So having conversations are very important, but especially about decisions that are going to be affecting the child. uh, because we don't want children to be forming liaisons with one parent and the other parent feeling completely left out. So it is very important to have those kind of discussions between the parents first, agreeing what is allowed and what is not allowed within your family, because every family will be different.
right.
And every family, the way they react to this, like, some families are completely fine, for example, now going out. There will be some families who are very, very worried about, and their situation might be different.
Mm,
Might be children who are a little bit more prone to illnesses. There might be grandparents at home. So the decisions that a person takes within a family depends a lot on the other factors as well. But as I said, the main thing is, take a decision between the parents, and then explain that decision to the child by giving a rationale about why they are, other than the fact that we have decided and you're going to follow. Just give them a rationale about, hey, we are really worried about this third wave. And we don't want anything to happen. We have grandma and grandpa at home, which, we have to take care of them. And once you realize that, once you are able to rationalize that decision with a child, they are more likely to, abide by it, rather than that resentment and trying to, like, make your life even more difficult than it already is at the moment.
right. We've just had a question come in about a mother who says she used to, she's helping the child with a lot of homework, but that adds to one is it adds to the her stress, but then she also worries about how this child will, learn to deal with it later on. But there's a lot of pressure because uh, the school expects that the homework get done, right? So or at least that's what she feels. So again, what's the guidance?
So I think, it will be, I don't know what age this child is, but
It's
if the,
about, I think, 8 to 10 or something like
okay,
that. Yeah.
okay, so I would say that, the parents absolutely not to do the homework, because I know that as well. There are quite a few parents who are actually doing the homework for the kids as well.
Hmm.
But, that is an absolute no. Parents, need to guide their children in doing what they need to be doing. But the fact is, I think parents need to be okay to say that, if the child is not able to do it by themselves, okay,
Hmm.
to discuss it with the teacher and say, we couldn't do this.
Right.
Rather than, as I said, doing that homework for them and putting too much stress on the child to be able to complete it. Uh, the main thing, like, I think the parents need to ask is, what are we achieving by doing this homework? It's not the parents' homework, it's the child's homework. And it's okay to, if the child is really struggling on one particular day, then to have that extension. But make sure that the child does it,
Hmm.
because it is, having that kind of stress for the mother is also not okay. It is about, okay, let's do this and do it in a way that we can complete it and achieve what we are supposed to be achieving by doing that homework, rather than just a namesake, we a tick box exercise that we finished it.
Right. Right. uh, One person's asked a question. We've noticed that our younger kids have lost the confidence to take exams, especially online exams, independently. They feel nervous and want mums in the room. And I guess some of them will be so young that they would have never done exams before, right? This may be the first time they would have done exams. So, again, tips for them.
I think it's completely fine for parents to be, supporting their children, because, as I said, this is a completely unprecedented situation for the children, especially the young ones. I am, I sometimes am quite surprised pleasantly about what the children can do currently at the age of 6 and 7. Like, they can log in into virtual school, they can go into Zoom and start their own classes. And I am at sometimes quite like, oh my god, I couldn't have done this when I was 6. But yes, that also the thing about, like, it's completely fine if they need that little bit of more hand holding for
Hmm.
parents to be doing that, rather than feeling, hey, they're expected to just go. And like, encouraging them all the time, praising them for doing it independently, like, take one step at a time. The first time might be very, very difficult. Maybe have some test runs before, where you
Hmm.
say, this is what the exam is going to look like, this is how it's going to be like. Maybe the first exam you might need to be there for the complete. The second, it might be like, hey, I'm going to leave in after some time, and gradually let them be confident about it. Because otherwise it's going to be a traumatic experience for them, where, mom is not going to be allowed in the room. Because let's
Right.
face it, this is something that,
Yes.
neither us nor the kids have ever faced. So a little bit of hand holding, a little bit of reassurance is completely fine.
Right. Um, Also, I think one of the challenges that, and again, that's a question we've received, playing numerous roles as the mother, the playmate, the friend, the teacher, the counselor is becoming very difficult. And it just, she feels it's ruined her relationship with her child, especially school with respect to school pressures. How can she balance it out?
I think that's another, of the common gripe, because as parents we were not used to, hand holding them that much at school, for example. I have two kids myself, as you know, and it was always like they go to school, they finish their school, and then they come back home, and probably it's fun time at home or maybe a little bit of homework. But that constant having to supervise them as parents, even as doing their school work, being there, especially the younger ones, need a little bit more hand holding. So constantly being available for school is going to is like taking its toll. My advice would be that if it's possible to spread, some of it across, share that responsibility with people. If
Mm,
if your husband is around, if your partner is around, it's okay to delegate part of it at least. That okay, I'm going to be looking after the homework, but playtime is your time.
right.
Okay, go and play football with this child, that is, and give me some peace and quiet for some time. Grandparents, you see grandparents, even if it's virtual, spending some time with the grandparents, because they get that calmness back into the life of children. And children also feel that it is, they're getting appreciated more. So as much as possible, that can be delegated rather than doing it completely by just one person, because it's not fair. And I am unfortunately seeing that the majority of the roles are falling on the mom,
Yeah.
because it's also they're working from home, and the house, keeping making sure that the house is prim and proper, as well as taking care of the children, is all falling on the parent, the mom especially. So my advice would be gently get other people involved as well. If they are not, as I said, if they might not be too keen on the schooling, at least get the fun bit out. Okay, at least
Right.
some sharing of responsibility might be important.
Yeah. So one of the recent studies that has come out on doctors in India, men and women, they found that the women doctors ended up by far, like I think some 60, 70% greater load on, especially schooling. At least the domestic chores was not as much of an increase. And, there was even uh, the male doctors saw an increase, but the effect of school activities was like, I think, an increase of some 70% or some such, quite significant. And I'm sure
Yeah,
it's true across, you know, all uh, all professions and so on.
absolutely.
So that's quite a, yeah, that's quite a burden. So I think, yeah, we need to also figure out how to get dads involved in school activities, some subjects at least. So
Absolutely. Or as I said, even if it's not schooling, the other activities, feeding the child, making sure they're fed and bathed, and that they are, that excess energy is off, at least has to be their responsibility.
yeah. Um, so one more question is, a mother feels that her son's attention span seems to have reduced. Again, any tips on that?
I think that is another huge thing that is coming across, that children are getting easily bored. To be honest, it's not easy to hold a child's attention online as much as a face-to-face interaction would hold. So
Correct.
we need to accept that it is going to be that much more difficult for the child to be sitting, and some children are sitting honestly for 2-3 hours at a stretch in front of the screen.
Mm,
It is very important that they get the breaks, they take the breaks. And I also say that some of the reasons why the attention, and as I said, there is a huge increase in that, where constant complaints are this child is not paying attention, or whilst they're doing something else while they're supposed to be at school. Either they are chatting with their friends on the side, there is WhatsApp or some chat open, or they are playing games, or they're seeing YouTube as well. So that is a common complaint that is coming across. So it is very important to acknowledge it, b taking breaks in between. So what is happening, is that even when there are breaks in school, children are continuing to be online, either because they're continuing to work, or they are chatting to their friends. So it's very important that they take the breaks, like, okay, when it's 10 minutes, you have to wake up, get up from your position in your room, go have
Right.
a movement break and come back, get some fresh air, have something to eat, a nibble or something, and then after 10 minutes, go back to the room. Because the main reason about why the concentration is wavering is because they're sitting at one place looking at that same screen for a long period of time, and keeping all distractions away. So even simple things like facing the wall, the study table facing the wall, so that your attention is not getting distracted. Keeping the phones away is very important, because that is where majority of the things start happening. They are either watching something else. Yes, but there are going to be limitations, as most parents, and I have also realized that you have access, so you can easily open another uh,
Correct.
window and start
Window.
doing something. Once in a while, I think, even if it is not constantly, it is important for parents to just peep in, especially for younger children, and see what they're doing, because they need to know that parents can just come in and check what is happening at times. Even if it's like, a random check in between, to see, hey, I just want to see what you're doing on screen. And it's very important that they have that, because in school it was like the teacher was monitoring it all the time. It's unrealistic for the teacher at the moment when they're virtual to be able to do that. So yeah, unfortunately, it still falls on the parents to, and as I said, it's not that constant monitoring, but every once in a while, so that the children are aware that, they might be checked upon. And little things like that. Movement breaks, as I said, very, very important.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that even adults struggle with maintaining attention online, right? So Zoom meetings with office colleagues, etc., if they are long sessions, is a challenge. So I guess to not expect that from children is
Yeah.
unrealistic. So
Yeah, like, 6 years old, 7-year-old child sitting in front of an online platform for, 3-4 hours together. It's unrealistic to be expecting that kind of a thing. So it's
yeah,
okay to once in a while just give them a break. Let them have that movement break. Let them have some fun things happening. But
right,
yeah, I think it is a realistic expectation as well, in terms of let's do the best that we can.
right, right. Um, One question, that I think always. So I think we as a culture don't talk enough about grief and bereavement, right? So, and especially in the context of COVID, a lot of families have got affected, and um, there's still not enough acknowledgement that children also go through grief and bereavement. So, I think we tend to assume that. They are because they don't have the vocabulary, or they may not understand things completely, they may not articulate it, so we assume that they are okay, or they haven't they've not noticed it, that grandparent has passed away, or even a parent is kind of very unwell or something. So again, how can families deal with this better?
I think quite pertinent, because, as you said, culturally, and I think the instinct of parents is to protect their children from anything painful. So it is, let's not talk about it. In my clinical practice, for example, I had a child and a mother who lost, the dad, and both were grieving very separately because both didn't want to hurt each other, for
Mm,
example. And the child was worried about the mom because the child was seeing the mom crying, but in, like, hiding and crying in the room. And the child didn't feel comfortable because they didn't want to make, mom even more sadder than she already is. But in the, it is very important to have uh, what we call shared grieving, because,
right.
as you're rightly saying, the loss is felt equally by the child. They might, at a very young age, they might not understand that this is a permanent loss, but it is a loss. After, like, when they grow up, they realize that this is, a permanent loss. And so what death means to different age groups developmentally is different, but the loss is felt by all age groups, whether it's temporary or permanent. So it is very important for the child to be able to feel safe enough to grieve.
Hmm.
So when the parents open the avenues of, the fact that grandma or grandpa has completely, has gone away and never going to come back, and what it means to them, if the parents are able to, say how that has made them feel, it makes a child feel much more comfortable to express what they are feeling as well, especially, if we are saying the age group between, say, 6 to 12. I think after that they do have that emotional intellect to be able to vocalize and express. But that age group is the one that struggles because we are also trying to shield them.
Hmm.
But having I advise my families to have, a shared memory session
Hmm.
where everyone is talking about what that person meant to them, beautiful memories that they have shared in life. Simple things like, remember that trip that we went on and how much fun we had, and things like that. And it's okay to cry in front of your children. Lot of parents, culturally as well, try to hide their tears from children. It's very important for children to see their parents, as humans. If you don't cry in front of your child, I think your child is not going to ever feel comfortable crying in front of you when they're adults. And I think it's completely fine to express that, parents can be sad,
Hmm.
parents can be weak, parents can, have these emotions as well, so that the child feels comfortable to share their emotions. And the shared grieving and the shared healing happens within a family, because that is the most important bit, because you celebrate a life which was together, that grandparent meant, or that parent meant something different to different people,
Right.
and to be open about it.
Right. One question that's come is, how do you deal with, all of this, especially if your teenage child is in, and this will probably be late teens in any case, is in a different city, or sometimes even in a different country. And I think it's become slightly better, but again, I don't know if the third wave is causing more anxiety on this.
um, yeah, so we are talking about a child being away, probably at university, or
Correct.
at a place that is not, um again,
Right.
I
Or,
think.
they are preparing for, these exams. You have these boarding in India as well, in a different city.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. I think the worry is real, in terms of, I don't know what my child is up to over there, and are they going to be, especially, are they going to be keeping themselves safe, are they following safety protocols and things like that.
Hmm.
But again, having maybe, once a week virtual meetings with the child, seeing them face to face is very important. I think I have parents who say we talk to them every day on the phone, but I said, no, no, have a video call so that you can see, your child, at least once a week, if not more.
Hmm.
And if you're worried, for example, to let your child know, I'm worried about you,
Hmm.
so that they don't feel, why is mom constantly calling me, it's irritating. Because, but if you tell them, I'm worried about your health, maybe they can understand better that, why mom is calling them that often.
Right.
But as I said, open communication and making sure, even if the child says I'm busy, to make sure that Zoom call happens every week, to
Hmm.
schedule that call at least, to let them know that the parents are available, is very important.
Right. Right. Um, is there any data that is already coming up on the, I know you said it's obviously unprecedented, but are there any effects of this long-term online schooling? Is there any data that, or research that is coming up? Or,
I think it's the research is happening, but we don't have, any data that has already come out in terms of Because we have short term data previously where from war zones, for example, or like natural calamities, that people have been secluded or like in isolation for maybe a couple of weeks or
Mm,
maybe a couple of months. But I think this has been the longest kind of in terms of lockdown, and so yeah, the results still are awaited of that data in terms of research, but it is ongoing.
right. Um, and I think we're probably pretty much towards the end of our session. Any message, this is from a parent, any message for educators on better handling long-term online schooling?
I think schools are doing the best they can. The only thing is about being sensitive about the situation that the children are in, because I think that is one thing that, there are a lot of expectations from everyone on the child as well. So to
Mm,
understand that, this has not been an easy journey for the child, for the children either. They have had, their life turned around. They've not had access to their friends. They have been asked to adjust to a mode of education that, is completely new to them. So, like,
mm,
virtual schooling, and with everything that entitles, like we have lags, we have internet outrages, we have we have parents who are extremely busy and probably not being able to give them the kind of attention that we might have been able to give before. So all that, bring it together, and the child is still trying to do the best. I think schools also need to realize that, and probably ease the pressure a bit, because the pressure on the child is indirectly the pressure on the parents at the moment, because
correct.
it is obviously the parents are, if a child is given 10 things to do, uh, the parents feel the pressure to have to conform to that.
Correct.
So I think not just school, I think school teachers, educators, as well as parents, the adults in the child's life need to understand that we need to give them some slack. Let's appreciate them for what they are doing. Let's once in a while, give them lots of physical hugs and appreciation, and tell them that we love them and
Mm,
that they're doing a great job, because they
right.
are.
Right. And any tips for, if you had to suggest three things that parents can do to de-stress themselves, because I think they are extremely stressed.
Not feel guilty about me time, having at least 15 minutes of me time where they're doing something that they like, not something completing their work. uh, Very, very important. Like,
Mm,
even if it's 15 minutes, each parent can take 15 minutes where the other parent is looking after the child, but doing something that they enjoy. It can be reading, it can be like painting, it can be talking to your friends, it could be anything, but it's that me time which cannot be taken away. Very important, because a lot of people feel guilty about doing that, especially parents, because there's lack of time. And make sure that you are looking after yourself, eating healthily and sleeping well. So simple things like that, and getting your physical exercises, even if it's at home. Housework is not physical exercise, let me tell
correct.
you. It is like, making sure that you are getting fresh air and, any kind of physical exercise for yourself. And because you can't pour from an empty cup. You
Correct.
have to look after yourself to be able to look after, your children, your parents, your in-laws, everyone that you are looking after. So that would be my advice, that a guilt-free me time is very important.
Right. Right. Thank you. I think we've addressed questions as well, and we've addressed a fair amount of stuff today. So, as Dr. Sapna said, uh, I think we just need to take a step back and uh, relax a little bit in terms of trying to be the best parent, be the best teacher, be the best professional, office worker, and so on, and prioritize your own health as well. And hopefully, we I think I also hope personally that the policymakers will look at ways for kids to get back to school sooner rather than later, and it does they figure out ways for at least certain groups to come in somehow. And I know it's a tough ask, but I think it needs to be um, worked on as well. So thank you, Dr. Sapna, once again for your time and for addressing a very, very wide range of questions that we've tried to cover in just 1 hour. It's a complex topic, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers would be extremely would have benefited a lot from this session. And
Thank you, Aparna, and thank you, Patients Engaged, to have me.
thank you. Let me stop the live stream.